You know, anytime anybody asks me, or doesn't ask me, and I just give my opinion as to how I see this thing going to play out, well, something that I've held back on saying for a long time now is that I've been through all this before. Now, I don't mean exactly this on a different planet or in a different country where exactly this scenario happened, but something that's very parallel. And it all happened within the paradigm that is a sort of a mental structure and legal structure of a global corporation. And what I mean by that is all of the same restrictions on your freedom of movement, where you can go, when you can go, legal restrictions and what they can tell you to do, and always pushing at whatever is the new borderline that they have pushed the front to. So when they move their land that they've captured, let's say, their territory, further towards you, they never say, right, this is it, we just put in the fortifications here and that's that, and what's on this side is ours and what's that side is yours. No, I mean, it's a ratchet. So they always, it's a racket, but it's a ratchet. It's the Fab Ian technique. They go slowly, but it's always, like a fishing reel. They reel you in, it clicks into the next position on the dial, and you're never going to pull back, and they'll never let go of the string. I guess, to use the fishing analogy, maybe they might let you swim a bit looser sometimes if they felt they've pushed too far and you might break the line. Then they let you go a little bit, maybe. So, but it's still the ratchet technique. And you can see that happening here as well. Sometimes when they push it too far, they then say, oh, no, we didn't really mean that. If necessary, if the public are still really angry, they might hang a scapegoat out. And they say, well, it was really his fault. He wasn't authorised to say that. He was wrong. We're the good guys because we countermand that order, whatever. But as well as that, it wasn't just the legal aspect to it within the corporation. And of course, they dress things up as policies, And then more than that, they try to make it out like if you would say, well, what's your policy? I mean, it's not law. And if they would say, well, it is as good as law because you're our employee and all our employees must follow corporate policy. And she said, well, who says that? Then they might say, well, we agreed on that. It's a contract because you signed it as part of your terms of conditions of employment. And of course, these people are always coming back to you saying, hi, we have a new update for your terms and conditions of employment. And you might say, well, show me where it says in my terms and conditions of employment, show me where my signature is under something that says I have to do this. And you see, they wouldn't be coming to you trying to convince you of something that you had to do if they were sure of it. They'd just tell you had to do it, you would do it, because you'd know you had to. But they don't like people questioning, obviously, and you get the same thing here as well. So I had years and years of this, And then if there was a little bit of pushback, they'd realise, oh yeah, okay, they would need to get you to sign a new thing. And that's when a lot of the treachery would come into play. But I'm getting ahead of myself a bit here, because what I want to speak to is an aspect of human nature whereby you don't really need these guys pushing too much. They make it seem to you as if you're compelled to do something. And then when others do it, or you do it, you give that ground away just by doing it once. And then if you do it once, and then other people see you doing it, and you see other people doing it, it just becomes de facto the thing that is done. So by doing it, de facto, it just becomes the thing to do. It's like a self-enacting law. And then, of course, you can see whereby months, years go by, and then people just forget that it was any other way. And of course, in a corporation, new people come into the corporation, and they just are keen to learn as quickly as possible how things are done, and how to do things like everybody else does. They might even be aware of the phrase, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So whatever are the apparent normal modes of behaviour to fit in, you just do what everybody else does. And you want to do that. So that's why, if anybody was still wondering why do corporations like, or appear to like, because they do like, a high turnover, because that way they get to change the internal culture, as they call it, of their corporation, although they mightn't tell you that's exactly what they mean by the internal culture. Quite often they just stick together a few buzzwords under or across from a few bullet points and make it sound like it has some kind of nice aspirations to it, and they call it, that's the company culture. And they even make it seem as if, or try to make it seem as if, it was something that evolved naturally or organically, that it was just something about the wonderful people that happened to come to work for it, that they all enjoyed the wonderful work environment and benevolent management structure, that this culture just flourished on its own. And of course, nothing could be further from the truth. It's dictated from top down. Anyway, I'm diverting from the point that I want to get to, which is there will be something that people will say, okay, I don't want to do that. I feel strongly enough where I'm going to actually voice my dissent. I mean, most of the times people don't really even argue. They might grumble under their breath, but they'll comply. So it really takes something quite draconian, quite impinging on people's freedoms before people will actually sort of say, oh, I don't agree with that. And it has been my experience over the years that people will grumble, people will say, I won't comply, but they do. So a lot of times, if I would object to things, people would say, oh, you're being negative. Why are you getting in the way of progress? Everybody else wants to do this. You're just a stick in the mud. You're trying to delay the inevitable. Why must you be always so objectionable to everything? Always characterizing me in terms of being negative, whereas really, I was making a positive stand for what is right. I was saying, no, this is the line. You've already got too much already, if anything. But I certainly don't agree with that. Because, if you just stop and think about it, if there's a relationship between an employer and an employee, somebody who wants some work done and somebody who can do the work, well then, it should be a mutually beneficial arrangement whereby you trade either your time or your energy or your expertise, your mental ability to solve some problem for the company, or your ability to fix something, to move something, to create something. And in return, they give you some of this money, or whatever the currency is. Now, whoever said, oh, well, on top of that, they get to dictate exactly when it's done, what you wear when you're doing it, what you should believe while you're wearing what they tell you to wear, when you're doing what they tell you to do, and then even impinging into your private life. And they do it so insidiously, so gradually, that you don't notice. They say things like, oh, we're having a wonderful evening out for the staff to celebrate the amazing performance we've had this quarter. And we're doing it out of the goodness of our hearts. And also we're having a get-together this weekend, for maybe families of employees, just so everyone can get to know each other. It becomes like a cult. People said to me, oh, what's wrong with that? Surely they'd have something in common then to be able to talk about work. Who wants to be a person who can only relate to other people based on what they did in work? So they want to worm their way in to your personal relationships. And they want to try and change everything it is that you believe after a while. They want to dictate what your stated political opinions are. They want to give you the morals that they want you to have, but they're not really morals. And maybe they don't really care as long as you just keep repeating all those correct opinions that the company makes it very clear they want you to repeat. So, what I'm trying to get at here is that, yes, it's demoralising, but in my experience, and it is a lengthy one, I'm sorry to say that when push comes to shove, people will betray you. And I will try and think of some exceptions. But what should speak volumes is that I'm struggling to. And I don't think that I have any for you. But I will record over a period of I don't know how long, over the next while, some examples that will demonstrate to you that what we are facing now has just left the walls of the corporate environment, and it has broken down any barriers between what is policy that would compel an employee to behave in whatever way the corporation would like, and what is the law of the land that would compel any citizen to do what the government would like. And I think most people would understand that any barrier between government and corporation had been dissolved, eroded, quite a long time ago. So, if they're one and the same thing, this is why whatever is your private life and whatever is your life where you spend earning a living for that life, they've now just made it the same thing. Where they can say, look, if you want to keep living, you have to keep earning. So just do what we tell you to do, say what we tell you to say, and believe what we tell you to believe, convincingly enough for our pleasure. Otherwise, we'll take it away from you. And it doesn't really seem to matter how intelligent or how stupid people are. I think everybody understands that, even if they can't quite articulate it. That there comes a point where they have to toe the line. Otherwise, they're going to not only suffer, but eventually pay the ultimate price. And most people don't even want even the slightest inconvenience to their life. They definitely don't have the backbone, the moral fortitude to say, I will suffer and I will continue to suffer for what I believe is right. Because that's an abstract notion. People these days, in the majority, have no real understanding of what a principle is. As I explained in a previous video, they just think it's something that helps you to get your way whenever you think that you want something. But it's something that they think they should immediately discard if it's not useful to them. And they think that something is only of any use if it gives them some immediate direct benefit. So, suffering of any kind, they don't see that as advantageous to them. They certainly would not say, oh well look, I'm feeling miserable, but at least it's character building. Absolutely not. They want to be comfortable, and they want to be entertained. They want to be safe and warm, and they want to be luxuriating in a manner to which they believe they ought to be accustomed. But certainly they do not want to have to go through any hardship. What's the use in that? So these people, and I include plenty of people who would make the weekly visit to church or chapel or whatever house of worship they might have, most of these people are only doing it because everybody else is doing it. They don't really believe in any higher principle that would stick with them in arduous times where they'd be able to say, yeah, I may not be able to put my finger on the actual object and say that is why I will remain resolute, but I have the courage of my convictions and I'm willing to die for it. So, there's nothing solid in their belief system that would make them say, oh yeah, I'll take my punishment. I'll stand firm in the face of this onslaught. No. I mean, it's so obvious, isn't it? Everybody not only sells everybody out eventually, but they do it immediately. And in my experience, the ones that most vociferously say, I'll never sign that, I'll never agree to that, or in this case here, you know, if they come around to my house, I'll fight them off. Well, see, it never really comes to an individual battle like that anyway. They just always bow the head, capitulate, and sign on the dotted line. Now, I had somebody recently, in a discussion, maybe he's listening now, tell me that I was victim blaming when I said that these people are all around us, and it is because of their actions that they'll drag us all with them to hell. So he said, no, these people are victims, and I'm blaming the victims. If you like, it's possible to be a victim and a perpetrator at the same time, or an agent of your own demise. And so this is it, you see. We, unfortunately, are not people who are sitting up high in the gallery, looking down on the arena here. And by the way, the arena was so called after the sand in the middle of the Colosseum, into which the blood of the gladiators spilt. So these people aren't brave enough to do any fighting, you know? I mean, when the Christians were sacrificed to the lions, the crowd didn't say, oh, here, that's wrong. That could be me one day. Don't do that to them. No. And when Jesus was crucified, Pontius Pilate, the sort of not top of the chain official, but the regional commander, he said, well, you know, this is out of my hands. Everybody at every level will just find a way to absolve themselves of the guilt, of their collective and individual responsibility. So again, I remind you, people will say to me, oh, but I mean, you know, what's the solution then? Why are you just bringing us bad news? I'm a messenger who's speaking the truth. And of course, the inclination when you hear news that you don't want to hear is to blame the messenger. I mean, if the postal service brings you a bill or any letter that's got bad news for you, I think most people are mature enough to say, well, it's not actually the postal service's fault. They're just delivering the message. They're just bringing you the information. And people might say to me, oh, you know, where's the facts though? You're just giving us opinion. Well, this is the kind of logic that hangs on its own. It's axiomatic. It doesn't need proof. It's observable in nature. And the nature is the condition of the human heart. They're timid. They're weak. They're selfish. And they will deny. Oh, it's not up to me. I have no control over that. I'm just going along with what I have to do. I might lose my job if I don't do this. I have kids to feed, you know. Etc., etc. So, the rebuttal to this is not, okay, fine. What's the solution then? Maybe there is no solution. But unless we identify the problem, there's no way that you can come up with a solution if you're in denial about what the actual nature of the problem is. And maybe there is a concentration of evil at the very top of this in command. But you know, there doesn't need to be. It is the sum total of every individual's abdication from personal responsibility in this that creates the big beast that we're fighting.